So you heard Mayor Doblanko and I chatting there. Our evening is going to begin with a greeting from Leduc County Mayor Tanni Doblanko. Thank you and welcome, Mayor Doblanko. I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thank you. I just have a note on my computer that said my internet's unstable. So if my lips aren't matching my words, it's not me tonight. But thank you very much for this opportunity to open the workshop tonight. And it's my pleasure to be here to welcome you to ALUS Six Seasons event on behalf of Leduc County. And for those of you who don't know me, I am Tanni Doblanko, Mayor of Leduc County. This is my third term as councillor and my fifth year as mayor of the county. And it really is an honor to be able to be present at events like this. And a little bit about me, and aside from my part here at council, my husband and I also run a very small cow-calf operation just outside of Kelmar. And I grew up on a farm, and so I'm kind of like many of you, back to my roots. And I really have an appreciation, and the older I get, a more appreciation for what our farmers do and the stewardship that our farmers bring to the land to ensure that they're there for not only our generations, but generations to come. And ALUS plays a really big part in this. I remember when we first started to talk about ALUS 6 years ago, when I was on council, it really seemed like a great idea. And what's good about great ideas is that they've really caught on, and we've had some great success stories in the Leduc Wetaskiwin area. And ALUS has enabled farmers and ranchers across both Leduc and Wetaskiwin counties to enhance not only the wetlands and native prairies, but also much more on their own property. It really does help our farmers take on projects that really help to produce cleaner air, cleaner water, bring back more biodiversity to their land, and benefits not only our farms, but all of the residents of both Leduc and Wetaskiwin counties. And you'll learn a lot more about ALUS tonight during the workshop. And so once again, on behalf of Leduc County, thank you for the opportunity to learn with you tonight and to open this program. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mayor Doblanko. That was awesome. Now, I would like to invite Dan Liddle to say a few words. Dan is our new ALUS Partnership Advisory Committee, or PAC, chair. Are you sharing your video, Dan?
I hadn't planned on it, but
Oh, thank you for doing that. Over to you.
Oh, like I'm putting my face on here. I was thinking you're talking about the other video thing. But anyways, good evening, and all the fellow ALUS participants and a few guests that are with us tonight. And my name is Dan Liddle, and I've been involved with the ALUS program for the last 3 years. And as recently appointed chairman of the ALUS committee for the Leduc Wetaskiwin County, I would like to welcome everyone on behalf of all the rest of the people that are on this committee. It's actually a privilege to spend some time with other people that have similar goals in terms of combining nature with agriculture. It's actually great to connect with so many individuals that want to create landscape that provides clean water, wildlife habitat, biodiversity to the ecosystem in which we all live. The best part is that every ALUS participant has made the decision to take on a project that fits in with their own values and financial goals. The ALUS program simply provides the encouragement to do what you have always wanted to do. We're living in a time when it's essential to go the extra mile and make sustainable land management decisions. We are all in the same boat, and together we can make a difference. Thank you for all that you've done, and I look forward to seeing what you're planning in the years to come. So with that, I'd like to just welcome everyone, and thanks for taking the time out tonight to learn a little more about ALUS. And I'll turn it back to you, Kim.
Thank you, Dan. That was great. Dan's not only a participant on our, not only on our ALUS pack, but he is also an ALUS participant. So we will actually be seeing a few things from his farm tonight. Well, I guess we can get started. Thank you for joining us. I'm going to start moving my slides now, I hope. There we go. So as I mentioned earlier, my name is Kim Barkwell, and I am the work for Leduc and Wetaskiwin counties as a Sustainable Agriculture Coordinator. And I am your host for this evening. With me, if you did not hear already, is Christine Campbell. She's the Senior Hub Manager West from ALUS Canada. And Christine will introduce herself and give a presentation on adaptive multi-paddock grazing later in the program. Our keynote speaker tonight, we're very pleased to have Leona Watson with us. Leona is going to share stories of her farming adventures in the Yukon. I don't think there's a lot of us that can have lived that same experience, not on a call anyway. She's going to share that and her worldly travels, and that exemplify making the most of every opportunity. During the webinar, if you would like to ask a question, please click on the chat and type it in. And if you address it directly to a host or co-host, it may be less distracting to the group. And then your questions will be addressed at the end of each presentation. Also, at that time, if you would like to unmute and speak directly, you may do so. Okay. The Sustainable Agriculture Program is a long-standing partnership between Leduc and Wetaskiwin counties, which promotes the awareness and adoption of beneficial management practices, or BMPs. BMPs are important because they can reduce agriculture's impact on air, soil, and water. Striving for continual improvement aims to ensure agriculture achieves its potential and remains viable in our communities while enhancing the natural environment. Agriculture and nature are interconnected, not mutually exclusive. So some of the activities under the program include sessions such as this one, biannual newsletter, environmental farm plan, and government grant application support. And finally, we have the ALUS program, which we're going to spend our time on for most of the evening. So the Sustainable Agriculture Program has offered ALUS since 2016, and we are really pleased that we got on board when we did. There are ALUS participants that have joined us tonight, and this event is meant to celebrate our successes and look toward the future of ALUS in our communities. I'm starting to read, oops. We would not have a program without our participant farmers. We are grateful for their work on the landscape. And some of this presentation will be a review for our farmers, but we hope everyone learns a little something new as well. So what is ALUS? It is a program for active farmers and available in 6 provinces across Canada. That's PEI, Quebec, Ontario, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Alberta. And there's a strong presence in Alberta because it fits well within our municipal systems. And there's also a wait list. So that's another reason why we are glad we got on board when we did. I guess we were early adopters. So ALUS pays farmers to increase ecosystem services on their farms, and it does this by cost sharing on project establishment and providing a yearly maintenance payment based on the acres involved in the project thereafter. It is meant to work within agricultural systems. It does not target high value agricultural land. Projects are related to marginal or environmentally sensitive areas like along water. And we'll share some of our project examples later on in the presentation. I am often asked who funds ALUS. And a common misconception is that ALUS is a government program, or it's the first assumption anyway, but it is not. It is a national nonprofit. The principal funder since the beginning is the W. Garfield Weston Foundation. And annually, ALUS National secures funds and provides them to communities across the province. Oh, not just the province, across Canada. Sometimes the funds do come from provincial and federal government grants, but again, it's not a government program. Municipalities contribute resources and staff to their ALUS program, and individual communities also access grants. Our community has received funds from the Alberta Conservation Association's conservation, community, and education grants to support project material costs over the last 3 or 4 years now. And at the same time, ALUS National continues to seek other sources of funding. So one of those ways they one of the things they have developed is the New Acre Project. The national team engages with large corporations who wish to support cleaner air, water, and habitat for wildlife and pollinators, and they are starting to see results. Oopsie daisies, I'm lost my pointer. There we go. So why did we pursue ALUS? It ties in very nicely with the Sustainable Agriculture Program because it promotes and supports the adoption of those BMPs, and many BMPs provide nature's goods and services, and that's what ALUS is all about. So ALUS provides support to our farmers in the community, and it benefits the whole community, not only in terms of the environment, but also economically by bringing those dollars into the community, right? So to be eligible for our program, farmers have to have land in Wetaskiwin or Leduc County. And our definition of a farmer is that minimum $10,000 gross farm commodity income. And in order to enroll acres, something new has to be added. So many farms already have natural spaces on their land providing those ecosystem services, but we require some additionality, some kind of something added to it. It's pretty straightforward to participate. You contact the coordinator, in this case me, and we create a proposal for your farm. Then our partnership advisory committee reviews the project, and if approved, an agreement is signed. Once the project is established, then ALUS will cost share with the farmer, and thereafter the farmer receives those annual payments. So one of the big principles of ALUS is that it's community developed, and local communities manage the program and focus on their priorities. And in order to do that, our advisory committee is also recommended to have 50% farmers. In our case, we do that. We have reached that target in terms of our voting members. So let's see, get this over here. We met Dan already. He's from County of Wetaskiwin, beef producer. Daryl Fipke, he's a custom grazer in County of Wetaskiwin. Roy Eckert, he's also a beef producer, Leduc County. And George DeBink, a dairy farmer in Leduc County. And we also have staff, Steve Majak, and from County Wetaskiwin, Agricultural Services Director, Manager of Agricultural Services, Aaron Van Beers. New council representatives, Lynn Carwell from County Wetaskiwin, Glenn Blauser from Leduc County. Glenn's on listening tonight. And who did I miss? Oh, and Al Corbett, he's our member at large. And Christine is also part of our pack, but she was not able to be there in person. This is a very recent picture, earlier this month. So we all pretty much look the same as that right now. Just a little bit program history. Again, we got on board in right at the end of 2015. So our first season was 2016. And since then we have over 1,000 acres enrolled. That includes acres from this year. This gives you an idea of where our projects are in Leduc County. I think it's worth mentioning, this is that prime agricultural cropland area. And yes, we don't have many projects in there, or one project we have in that kind of in that zone. But so yes, we're not targeting that high agricultural land. At the same time, we can see an awful lot of tributaries here. So there still may be room for, grass buffers or grass waterways, or enhanced buffers in some of those areas. That would be a benefit and to both the farmer and the water body. And here's the map of County Wetaskiwin. Dots all over. So a little bit about projects. Again, I mentioned earlier, projects are typically those considered beneficial management practices. And in our community, off-source watering systems are a very common project. Another is fencing around wetlands and along creeks to manage livestock access. These projects enhance water quality and can restore riparian areas. Riparian areas provide many of nature's benefits, such as water filtration, habitat, and biodiversity. I believe the statistic is about 80% of Alberta's wildlife access riparian areas for some of their, at least some of their life cycle. So a riparian area is that darker ribbon of green that's along our waterways. Tends to be more lush and deep-rooted vegetation there. Some more riparian fencing and off-site watering. This water is off spring development. Also have, this is an example of a small pollinator planting for native pollinators. The idea being if you plant different species, native species that flower at different times, that's a benefit for the pollinators all throughout the season. More riparian fencing and some signage. This picture kind of shows the evolution of our signs in our community. Signs are provided to farmers and they're asked to mount them near their project. Originally we had the smaller signs, but now we have bigger signs to be more easily seen on our bigger prairie landscapes. Another riparian fence and watering system example, but we are not only a fencing and watering system program. We have supported other projects and some of these are to follow. There is a shelter belt eco buffer project in Leduc County that has been doing very, very well. This landowner had a difficult area to farm and had already a great shelter belt developed in another area. And so knew what to do and knew how to make it have a good chance of success. So that is that shelter belt project. I think you'll see more pictures of it later on. This year we did a grass waterway and cropland That's a BMP because it helps with water quality, soil, wind erosion, right? Not every year can you crop that. So the grass waterway is a good BMP. Another example here, the farmer wanted to allow the bush to come back, have more shelter for their cattle. They had been pasturing in there, so now they're managing that with electric fence. It's doing quite well. And we've also supported livestock crossing across the creek. This is a pretty cool one too. I don't know why there's a, oh, I'm seeing things weird, sorry. So this is a native prairie planting. It includes purple prairie clover, yarrow, nodding brome, green needlegrass, brown-eyed Susan, and Hooker's oat grass. And I'm quite intrigued by this project. That native species are native, but they're seem to be hard to grow, hard to establish. Yet once they are better suited to our climate. Excuse me. And then also we have the benefit of some of those forbs in there for the native pollinators. So pretty cool project, and it's doing quite well. It was developed more with the idea in mind of being a bit of a demonstration of what you can do. It's not a real large piece, but it's still pretty cool. Something that we do with ALUS too is go out and monitor projects every year, just make sure they're there. And those part of our monitoring, sometimes it's just as simple as a picture, and those pictures tell a great story over time. So this example here was fenced off a wetland and provided a watering system. And it just shows what just some rest and a whole lot of rain can do in a period of a year, because we had that really wet fall and spring, and I just couldn't get over how the grass rebounded that. And finally, just wanted to show you a few pictures of some of our farmers. It's the most favorite part of my job, getting to connect with the farmers in our municipalities. Got another slide there. Oh, and I had to put this picture in. This is in the height of even wearing masks when you're outside. And someone took a picture and you can't even see my eyeballs. We're handing off a sign to a new participant. So. And that's the end of my presentation about our community. Was there any questions? I don't see anything in the chat. It was just so self-explanatory, I guess, hey? Okay. Well, I have a video to share with you. I might just stop sharing briefly while I try to get this to work. There we go. I think I've got it about ready. So earlier this year, our committee decided that it would be really good to, oh, just a minute. Maybe there's a question here in the chat. Oops. Where, how, and the source of plants for the native prairie planting. Dan, would you mind speaking to that?
Yeah, the we just got these plants from, it was Skinner Native Seeds in Manitoba. And I can't remember his first name now, but his last name's Skinner. And I simply went online, and if you just type in Skinner Native Seeds, you'll get it. And I think the seeds were, it cost something like $150 to seed 1 acre. So, and there was a lot of little native wildflowers that we planted in the garden to start with, and then tried to kind of reestablish them or collect seed and move that out. So that's the hardest part, is the native wildflowers are not easy to start, but the grasses really came on nicely. Like, it's a pretty good stand of the spear grass and the nodding brome and the clover, and all those plants formed a really nice stand of forage. And so I just had to cut the forage for feed, and then hopefully I've been picking all the thistles out by hand. That's kind of a job, but we'll get her done, and eventually it'll be a more established stand, and I hope other people would consider it, because these native plants are far more resistant to drought, and they're capable of, you know, it's not like you're planting an annual crop. The roots go down a long ways, and whatever happens in the next few years, hopefully we'll be able to adapt. And that's about all I can tell you.
Thank you, Dan, for that. It was much easier to have you answer that question. So next we have our video. It's an amateur production with many contributors. Narrated voice regarding Wetaskiwin-Leduc ALUS was provided through staff interviews. I'd like to make special mention to videographers Councillor Kelly Vandenberg, who was also on our PAC until recently, and Chris Liddle. They have created more detailed videos of Dan and Larry, the ALUS participants you will see featured. Right now, we are researching the best way to house and share those complete videos with the public. But now we are going to watch our anniversary video. Farmers put food on our table, and they look after natural spaces that benefit all of society. And however, sometimes farmers don't feel appreciated for the work they do. And I'm proud of ALUS because it supports and recognizes our local farmers' efforts.
Exactly. I mean, when you've got clean water, your cattle do way better, and they gain better. They're not messing up the dugout by walking in it, and your dugouts last longer. They don't get tramped in, and it's really important to have offsite watering because your cattle, the water's always clean. Over my tomahawk pasture through Parkland County, I put in through the ALUS program 3 solar pumps in my dugouts. I fenced my dugouts out and put them in. If I hadn't have, I would have ran out of water this summer before I ran out of grass because the
Oh no.
dugouts were low. The cattle would have went tramping in there. They'd been up to their bellies in mud. They wouldn't have done well because the water was all muddy.
Ag does have an impact on the land for sure. But by recognizing that there's things that farmers and producers are doing to mitigate that, or things that they're doing that can even enhance that, especially around water quality and wetlands and things like that, I think is a story that needs to get out there more, and that more people need to hear and understand that it's not just, chemical or feedlots or, whatever potential negative term that might be out there in the media, but there's actually all this other really awesome stuff that's happening that will have significant impacts that we may or may not be able to measure, especially downstream or, you know, in neighboring parcels of land or even municipalities.
It's a win-win. It's a win for the farmer by having good water for his cattle. And I guess it's a win for nature that things grow back in again.
Yeah, because actually those natural benefits that nature provides, that's for all of us.
It is, yes.
Yeah, and a lot of times farmers are managing that. So
yep.
That's where ALUS
farmers are probably the best stewards of the land that there is, because without their land in good shape, they don't make a living.
When I first found out about it, I think we were at a grazing seminar out at Breton. And the more I learned about it, the more I realized, well, this exactly fits with our values, our lifestyle. It's going to give us a chance to do what we've always wanted to do with our land and create the environment we've always wanted for the wildlife and improve the water quality.
Agriculture farmers are doing work on the landscape that benefit us all, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those ecosystem services, nature's benefits, they spill over to everybody. Farmers have always been land caretakers, yet most farmers have marginal, less productive areas on their land that could be put to a different use. Farmers identify these areas themselves and come up with a project plan. The ALUS program cost shares projects with the farmer and provides a yearly maintenance payment thereafter.
ALUS to me is a way to provide power to the farmer to be able to make the right decisions when it comes to thinking about the environment on their land.
I have to stop the share there. I hope I haven't lost you all. Wonderful. Okay. With that, did you guys have any other questions? Or if not, then we will let Christine load up her presentation and talk to us about a new initiative that a new pilot project.
Wonderful. It helps if I unmute. Thank you, Kim. That was a really great introduction to what ALUS is, and I apologize if I have any overlap here, but we'll drive it home one way or another. Kim did a great job of presenting the ALUS concept, so I'll try to breeze through some of that and focus on something that's new and exciting, that's really just on the horizon with ALUS. We haven't fully rolled it out, but we will be in 2022 looking at enhanced grazing through ALUS. So that's very exciting. But before we get going, I just want to say congratulations to ALUS Wetaskiwin-Leduc on 6 years of fantastic work, and so many ecosystem services produced. I think it's something that you should all be very, very proud of. All the farmers and ranchers who have participated in the program, PAC members, county staff, everybody's been a very important part of that. So here's to 6 years more and hopefully many more to come. So ALUS really is where agriculture and nature meet. Just to kind of stand on my own personal soapbox for a second, I've always felt that there's in many things in our lives, there's this kind of dichotomy where people tend to think kind of black and white. You know, this land is for agriculture, this land is not. This land, this is bad, this is good. All of those kinds of dichotomies exist, and where I've always tried to fit in is where we can find solutions and stack benefits. So where we can get sort of maximum benefit by looking at things in a new light and understanding how we can do more than one thing at any one time. And so ALUS was really attractive to me because I really think that that is exactly what the ALUS program allows to happen. It allows farmers and ranchers to look at their land and understand which areas are best suited to agricultural production and which areas have the opportunity to produce something more or something different. And by that, I mean, of course, ecosystem services or all of those good things that nature provides to us. So our mission at ALUS is to help farmers and ranchers to build those nature-based solutions on their land that do two things. They both sustain agriculture, but also biodiversity and other ecological benefits. And they do that not just for the benefit of the farm itself, but for the benefit of the greater community and for future generations as well. And the whole concept itself is not new. I mean, as far back as 1934, the father of conservation himself, Aldo Leopold, was saying that conservation will ultimately boil down to rewarding the private landowner who conserves the public interest. And clearly we see that that's true today. Most land is privately held. And so if we don't start focusing on where we have the best opportunities for the biggest bang for our buck, we're never really going to get anywhere with conservation, and certainly not with mitigation or restoration or improvement of where we are today. So ALUS helps farmers and ranchers to produce a whole bunch of ecosystem services, just some of which are included on the slides. So we look at things like water filtration and helping the landscape actually retain more water. That helps with both drought because the water still exists in the soil when we have a year like this, but also on the flip side, it also helps with flood mitigation as well, because where we have better water infiltration into the soil, our land is better able to handle large volumes of water without sort of spilling over in ways that are destructive to us. We can also recharge our groundwater and make sure that we have plentiful water supplies. We can have cleaner air and carbon capture as well. Our grassland ecosystems especially are very good at sequestering carbon and largely underrated for doing so, but very, very important. We can also support native habitat and the whole nutrient cycle process. So as Kim said, ALUS is a farmer-delivered program, and this is very important because I think that farmers and ranchers are really in some of the best positions out of anybody to be conservationists and stewards. Most of them are inherently stewards of the land and good stewards of the land just by virtue, as I think it was Dan said in the video, their operations rely on having good land. And so it really just makes a whole lot of sense to take good care of the land. But when we take a step back, and if we're looking at sort of society and us wanting to produce more ecosystem services, what's the best way to do that? Well, one, you're going to need a large land base to accomplish some of these very big, lofty goals. Well, farmers and ranchers hold a large land base. But number two, you also need somebody that has the skills to be able to produce things out of nature. And guess what farmers and ranchers do every single day? They are in the business of producing things from nature. So it makes perfect sense to leverage those skills on behalf of society. ALUS is also a voluntary program. So farmers and ranchers get to choose how they participate, when they participate, all of those kinds of things. The agreements that we make with producers are very flexible. There's exit clauses and all of those kinds of things. So it can really be well suited to the operation. And different from some other conservation programs, ALUS does not go on title or tell farmers and ranchers how to do things on their operation. It's very much driven by the farmer or rancher themselves. So traditional ALUS projects, as Kim mentioned, oh man, words are hard. Traditional ALUS programs have focused on the enhancement of marginal land. So looking around and identifying these areas that just aren't that great for producing traditional agricultural products, or areas that are particularly environmentally sensitive, such as wetlands and riparian areas. So, if we kind of look at my very simplified diagram here, if you consider this kind of the farm, the cattle are grazing, doing their thing, and then you have a wetland over here. Where we're looking at is how we can produce more off of this little chunk of land that isn't necessarily the best pasture land. Maybe cattle are getting stuck in there or getting hoof rot or that kind of thing. But also it's quite environmentally sensitive, and the cattle can cause some damage, pugging and hammocking, water quality issues and things like that. So putting in a simple offsite watering system and fencing the cattle out kind of has benefits on both sides of the equation. The cattle might gain weight faster, have less health issues and that kind of thing, but also that wetlands protected and can perform its ecological functions that much better as a result. But as Kim said, there's lots of different ALUS projects that we can do. So often we're called in to assist with bank restoration or areas of high erosion. Pollinator habitats become quite popular recently. Wetlands in various different ways, whether it's sort of an enhancement by fencing off a wetland from cattle or something like that, or providing a buffer from a crop. Or in some cases, it may even be restoring or constructing wetlands. Creating wildlife habitat or planting trees in some areas is a popular project. And then Kim's already mentioned it, but exclusion fencing, or not necessarily exclusion, but management fencing is a fairly popular project here in Alberta, just by the nature of the kind of agriculture that we work with. So I like to think of ALUS as kind of the farmer's market for ecosystem services. So, we're all familiar with that concept. You grow your corn, you take it to market. I come and I'm hungry and I buy that corn from you. It's very much a similar kind of model for ALUS. So we have funders who are interested in the outcomes that producers can produce on their land. So things like carbon sequestration or biodiversity or flood and drought mitigation. And they come and they say, hey, we would like some flood mitigation, please. And our farmers and ranchers say, hey, we have projects that we would like to do that will have those results. And so ALUS is kind of that mechanism to marry the two and provide that transfer of economic benefit from the buyers who need those services to the producers who have the ability to produce them. So what's new for ALUS this year, and this is kind of a sneak peek preview, is that we are starting to dip our toes onto trying to work on the working lands. So it's a pilot program, and we're going to be piloting enhanced grazing projects. So how is this new? How is this different? So I kind of explained how that traditional approach of working on marginal lands works. So if we go back to my bad diagram, in this case, you know, it's a fence and a watering system, and really what we're doing is managing this piece of land differently than how we managed it before. What would be new about ALUS or about enhanced grazing through ALUS is that we're actually kind of swapping that mindset a little bit. We're still going to do all of that marginal land enhancement, but what we're tasking our PACs with is, or our partnership advisory committees with, is understanding how we can look at the way agriculture itself is done and look for opportunities to enhance the ecosystem services produced while still producing the agricultural product. So in this case, we're looking specifically at a targeted pilot program for cattle grazing. So in this case, the focus is on the animal management to produce those ecological outcomes, as opposed to the way we're managing a certain chunk of land. So it's a little nuanced, but hopefully that'll come to light as I explain what we're hoping to do with this. So in kind of a big picture, what we would like to do is enroll this suite of management tools that can be used to catalyze accelerated grass growth. And ultimately what we're trying to do is build richer, healthier soils that can then sequester carbon and provide other ecological benefits, whether that's wildlife habitat, pollinator habitat, flood and drought mitigation, etc. So our goals with enhanced grazing are all of those. So increased carbon sequestration, improved water holding capacity, so that we have that flood and drought mitigation built into our systems, potentially increased biodiversity or improved resilience to climate change, just generally improved vegetation growth and reduced weed pressure. But also that improved soil quality and improved water quality as well. And then all of that's going to lead to improved nutrient cycling as well. But the benefits don't stop there. There's lots of co-benefits for the ranch. So I'm not a rancher myself, as much as I like to joke that I'm trialing this enhanced grazing with my guinea pigs. I'm told that does not count. So I take it from the experts, all the ranchers that I talk to, and many of them tell me that when they start doing these kinds of grazing practices, that they have overall better animal health, less hoof rot and things like that, and ultimately then lower veterinary costs. Their cattle are also getting access to better quality of forage and well-managed quantity of forage, and they're utilizing the forage that's available to them that much better. So that means that they're getting a better nutrition. And when the pastures are managed in these ways that I'll go into in a second, they can also squeeze out a little bit longer grazing season. And when you're feeding a herd, a day or two can make a difference of thousands of dollars potentially. So ultimately, they're finding that it could have increased profitability potential from those aspects, but also potentially access to niche markets. And then one of the things that I find most intriguing is just the whole animal experience as well, because the livestock are being handled often and in a very positive manner. They're easier to handle, and it's a lower stress experience ultimately for them, particularly during transport or end of life situations. So this is kind of a bit like this enhanced grazing and getting out onto the working landscape are kind of big topics, right? Enhanced grazing could mean a lot of things. And on the working landscape also can mean even more things, right? Maybe it's maybe there's potential in the future for other on-farm practices that we could target through the ALUS program. But this is very new for us, and we really need to treat it as a pilot. So we are starting with quite a narrow scope and looking at specifically one tool called adaptive multi-paddock grazing, or AMP grazing. Now, you may have heard other terms for it. Might have heard things like high intensity grazing or mob grazing. Sometimes even rotational grazing is used to refer to this form of grazing. But essentially what we're talking about is using many relatively small paddocks to manage grazing in a different way. So we're allowing the rancher to identify plant communities that are going to grow in different ways and then manage the herd accordingly. So for instance, a north-facing slope may grow slower than a south-facing slope. And so fencing them off into different paddocks actually will allow those areas to be managed differently. And then that's followed by extended periods of rest for the paddock. And the whole concept is really about trying to mimic the way that wild herds of ruminants like bison would have moved across our grasslands in the past. And by doing that, the hope is that you're unlocking kind of the evolutionary strategies of the plant that are optimal for its growth. So these principles are very important. Grazing is done sort of intensively enough that the paddock is grazed quite uniformly, but then you're leaving that paddock while there's still enough plant growth and plant material there that the plant has enough to meet its ecological needs. So when it starts growing again, it's able to grow from its leaf surface area as opposed to having to pull out of its rootstock. And by doing that, we're taking carbon out of the air and we're encouraging that downward pattern where it's able to keep those carbon stores in its root system. Then followed by that long period of rest. And so the recognition is that the more stressors that paddock is exposed to, the more rest is going to be needed. So if it's grazed really intensively, it's going to need to rest for longer. If it's a drought year and that kind of thing, all of those kinds of pieces are going to impact, whether that's 3 weeks or 3 months, or maybe even 3 years that a paddock needs to get rested for in between grazes. And then the key piece is adaptation. So the producer is really honed into what's going on in that system, looking at the cows, looking at the plant growth, and looking at the whole ecology of the area, and then adjusting the management techniques accordingly. So that might be depending on what's going on with the plant community, what types of plants are growing there. Like I said, maybe it's the aspect, the slope, moisture regime, soil conditions, weather patterns, all of those kinds of things are going to play into that. And then we just recognize that, we can sort of have the best laid plans, but at the end of the day, sometimes you'll have to look at it and say, yeah, we need to change that. So this is a new foray for ALUS, and I think it's really exciting. I really feel like we're on the precipice of some big things. So, what's unlocked the ability to try out this sort of new avenue of funding for farmers, and I really believe that it's the hard work that everybody here has put in over the last 6 years. The PAC staff, farmers and ranchers, you guys have you've proven the concept of ALUS beyond compare. We're also starting to see more consumer pressure for different kinds of agricultural management, and as a result, some political will. And then we're starting to see that these things are getting tied into corporate sustainability goals. So we're going to start seeing that percolate more and more. So all of that has led to funding. And money makes the world go round. If you have funding for something, usually you can do it. So Kim mentioned our New Acre project. It's the sort of corporate philanthropy arm of ALUS. And they're constantly out there looking at opportunities and understanding what will help producers to achieve environmental outcomes. And one of the things that they had targeted was enhanced grazing. And so lo and behold, they found some funders who are interested in giving this a try. So it's a consortium of corporations that are sort of funding this. At the moment, the main players are Cargill and A&W, but we do anticipate that there will likely be other funders that come in for this. And so we're kind of creating this sub-program that we're calling Grazing Forward. And it's not really surprising to me that those particular funders have gotten involved, because we are seeing some strong commitments to them through their supply chain. So, for example, Cargill has committed to a 30% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 2030, which is a pretty significant goal and not that far away. And they said publicly how they were going to do that was by looking at soil health. So looking specifically at getting farmers to adopt agricultural practices that have the ability to store carbon in the soil and also improve water quality and water storage capacity. Well, check, ALUS projects do that. They also stated that they recognized that this needed to tie into farmer prosperity. So farmers needed to share in some of that economic benefit for the environmental benefits that they're providing. Well, check, that's what ALUS is all about. And then they wanted to work through their beef supply chain. So again, we're working with those producers. The only box that we didn't tick was transportation. And they can deal with that through other things. So it was really not surprising that they sought out ALUS to help them achieve these goals. So just a little bit of a note on timeline for this. We announced the funding all the way back in May, but this is something that takes a little bit of work to get started. So since then, we've been working with the partnership advisory committees to roll this out and understand what this means for ALUS, what this means specifically at the community level, because ALUS is a community developed program. And so whatever Grazing Forward looks like for ALUS Wetaskiwin-Leduc needs to fit your local community and your priorities and what works for your producers. So our goal is to launch this AMP grazing pilot next year. So not necessarily, January 1, but so that we're ready to go for next field season. So the PAC has been having some of these discussions, and there's still a lot more discussion to be had in terms of how we're going to exactly roll this out and what the nuances are going to be. But stay tuned. Likely, it will follow the same ALUS model where there's establishment cost share of some kind. Ultimately, the PAC's going to be responsible for deciding what kinds of infrastructure are eligible for funding. And that may be based on how much funding is available for the community, what's appropriate for the site itself, and that kind of thing. So, but it may be things like fencing, it may be things like watering systems. Some of those are things that we're already doing on our marginal land projects. And then in terms of the annual payment that we make for management and maintenance, that's the other piece that the PACs are sort of figuring out exactly how they're going to administer it, and what lands are going to be eligible for enrollment and that kind of thing. But in terms of our expectations of the farmer or rancher, The key things we'll be looking for is observation of the paddocks, some kind of subdivision of of pastures to be able to manage those different plant communities differently. Moving the cattle relatively often and then letting those plants fully recover between grazes. We also like to see a little bit of foresight for more sensitive pastures, so specifically riparian pastures around water bodies. Those ideally should be grazed when it's driest out or when the ground's frozen, and when the migratory birds are not trying to nest there. So after July 15th or before April 1st is generally a good guideline. It's also nice if there's upland water. You can also use things like salt and minerals and shelter to help to distribute cattle pressure, especially away from wetlands or wet areas that will be more susceptible to damage. And then, as always, controlling weeds and that kind of thing is going to be important. And the whole idea there is to, again, be stimulating plant growth. And so the idea is we want that area to stay covered with vegetation, avoid bare soil and overgrazing and that kind of thing. And to do the adaptive part of adaptive multi-paddock grazing, we would expect you to watch for ecological indicators that might indicate that you need to change that management somehow. So you want to watch how fast those plants are growing and when that pasture is ready to graze again, how fast the cattle are eating, are they going to run out of food before you move them, that kind of thing. You can look at manure distribution as well to kind of get a proxy for how they're grazing. Think about what's happening with the weather, and then look for some of the indicators that ecosystem services are actually being produced. So, we want to see improved productivity. So in other words, more plants, more plant growth, faster growth, those kinds of things. So, and ultimately Grazing Forward has some pretty big goals. Our plan is that we'll impact more than 6,000 acres over the next, basically two more years left in this initial grant. And we'll be engaging with ranchers in 20 communities. And our new acre project is relatively new. So the new acre project sponsors haven't been responsible for that much of our acre inventory thus far, but we're hoping that this is actually going to bump up the new acre project's impact by 233%, which is pretty phenomenal. So speaking of that impact in general, ALUS has had quite a bit of impact. So to date, and these are as of March 2021, we'll have new stats after the end of this year. We'll have all our new numbers, but up until basically the end of last year, we had over 32,000 acres of land enrolled in ALUS. Kim mentioned over 1,000 of those are here in Wetaskiwin-Leduc. That's very cool. We've also invested over $12 million in the program, and that's going directly to farmers and ranchers and communities on the ground. And then they all are able to multiply that investment on the ground through the cost share, through the effort and labor that they're doing. And over 1,100 participants, farmers and ranchers are participating in the program. So that's very cool as well. So if any of this has piqued your interest, I really encourage you to talk to Kim. Kim, sorry, I threw your contact information up there. I hope that's okay. Or talk to any of the PAC members as well. They're a great resource too, but Kim's ultimately the one that would help you with that application. So that's all from me. If you have questions about what the future of ALUS looks like through the Grazing Forward program, or anything about ALUS beyond Wetaskiwin-Leduc, I'm happy to answer any of those questions. You can type them in the chat.
Or you can ask them directly if you're so inclined. That was very interesting, Christine. I did get comments, some direct comments about But it was a very interesting presentation. And of course, I am very happy that you put my my phone number on there. I'm not the most fond of that picture, but what the heck?
I think it's beautiful.
Oh, why, thank you. Wonderful. Well, I don't see any questions in the chat. I guess we are very thorough. So with that, I'm going to introduce our special keynote speaker tonight. And that is Leona Watson. Hello, Leona.
Hello, everyone. Thanks, Christine, and thanks, Kim. And just thanks for the invite. I wish it was light outside and that I could do this whole presentation outside with a beautiful mountain background behind me. But what I was able to do, actually, so we're just going to jump right into things, is I'm going to play a 10-minute video of the first half of my presentation that I recorded just a couple hours ago out at our farmland. So we'll go right into that, and hopefully this works. Welcome to the Yukon. My name is Leona Watson, and I'm flattered to be a part of your online event this evening and thrilled to share with you my farming story that has ended up here in the Yukon. I am standing on our homestead quarter that's located just off the Alaska Highway outside of Whitehorse. So it's been a year and a half in the works, and we're hoping to seed our first crop this coming spring, which is very exciting. But before I tell you more about the Yukon and farming in the Yukon and its challenges and I think opportunities, let's start off the evening with kind of the beginning of my farming background. So born and raised in northeastern Alberta, not too far from you folks, and I guess St. Paul, Bonnyville area, where I'm the eldest of 5 daughters, and my parents own and operated a mixed farming operation. So we had a feedlot of 4,000 head of cattle and managed, I think, upwards of 7,000 acres of land at the time in pasture and in crop. So there was always something to do, always equipment to be cleaned, cattle to check, and yeah, just something to do on the farm. So we definitely worked hard together as a family, and played hard together as a family, which taught us a lot about having respect and responsibility, being accountable for the jobs that we did. You know, I'd bug Dad that he was lucky to have 5 daughters run the equipment, because it seemed like we were pretty easy on things. There wasn't very many times that we wrecked things, not that I remember anyway. And yeah, we just had a ton of fun, and most importantly, probably, I mean, we're taught to have pride in the work that we did, and to, you know, develop, to be passionate about something in life. And so in moving on, I guess when I graduated grade 12, my passion was definitely agriculture. So I enrolled in agriculture business at Olds College. And at the time of my life, it was a blast. It was so much fun. and then was exposed to just the broader agricultural community that even went as far as being involved in the international community through the Royal Agricultural Society of the Commonwealth, where Princess Anne is the president, and I got to meet kind of farm kids from across the Commonwealth. We was in Africa, Australia, the UK, Singapore, whether it was urban agriculture or rural agriculture. It was truly an eye-opener and an experience that I will never forget. So being involved in agriculture and being passionate about farming, you know, there were so many opportunities. When I came back home after graduating from Olds College, I wasn't too sure what my next steps were going to be. Unfortunately, at the time, I was 22 years old, and in late 2007, that's when both of our parents passed away in a plane accident, and our grandmother. And so life, life took a turn for us girls, and we took over the family farm because that was, we knew how to do that, and then kind of proceeded to deal with mom and dad's unplanned estate. Mom and dad's will was from when after Lynn and I were born, so just 2 of the 5 girls. Would things have been different? Probably, if we sat down and talked about what mom and dad's wishes would have been. In the end, it all turned out fine. The second oldest, my sister Lynn, she was also an Olds College grad of agriculture production, and she took over the family farm. So her and her husband and their 3 kids have continued the family farm, and she's up to all sorts of fun stuff with her Farm Bucks app, and she's killing it. She's doing awesome. Her and her husband Ryan. My middle sister Sarah is a veterinarian, and her husband is a doctor, and she actually just delivered their 3rd baby girl this morning. So we're quite proud and happy for her. My second youngest sister, Suzanne, she went to Olds College. She's the 3rd sister to go to Olds College and took fashion. And so no matter what, mom and dad encouraged us to pursue our passions and our dreams for whatever that was. They didn't make us stay on the farm or kind of, make us, get off the farm. Like it was you make your decisions and we're here to support you. And so with living after with their example of living life to the fullest and doing the things that you really want to do and being intentful in the things that you want to do. And then I just set such a great example. So Susie went to Olds College for fashion. She's a wedding planner in Edmonton and a makeup artist, and she goes back to the farm and does every job. She's like the right hand man out for the busy seasons, for seeding and harvest, obviously. And my youngest sister is a registered dietitian. She has a baby girl and married a farmer from home that's just down the road from the family farm. So they'll be taking over his family farm eventually. And so that's kind of, I guess, the breakdown of all 4 of my sisters and a little bit of, I guess, a snapshot of what life has been for us after mom and dad's passing. But it's been over 13 years now, 14 years, and time flies, and you just gotta make the most of it and be appreciative and take the time to remember those that were near and dear to our heart and have influenced us to be the people that we are today. And so after that, I worked for John Deere for a couple of years and worked with our neighboring farmers and really just kind of shared the perspective that mom and dad had and that I was fortunate to grow up with, of being a progressive farmer, of trying the new things, of taking care of our wetlands and incorporating equipment at a very early stage in minimum till, feeding our cattle vitamin E supplements because of meat redness on the shelf, and just trying to gain that extra value on the farm, because there's value in that. And so after John Deere in 2011, once my youngest sister graduated from high school and was off to university, then I applied for a Nuffield scholarship. And for those of you who don't know about Nuffield, it's an international travel scholarship opportunity that enables you to study a topic of your choice and really become, a master of that topic, come back and hopefully influence Canadian agriculture to be, to its next progressive steps in whatever that is. So I chose mine to be family farm succession planning because that was what I had to deal with for the previous 4 years, and wanted to, it was kind of the start of One Canada, of all these promoting succession plan, because we need to, talk about things and plan things out, because that's a good thing. So a few of the takeaway points about succession planning, and that's really relevant to life and working with people in business setting, in the home setting. The number one thing is that communication is key. We can't ever assume other people to be, to know what we're thinking or to know what we want to achieve. if we don't talk to them. So communication is key. It's a good thing to be aware or to be mindful of that plans will change. Nothing is constant. Change is constant. It definitely seems to be a bit of a theme for 2021, because any time my husband and I made plans with the outfitting business or the farming business, it was just things change on a daily basis. So that's okay. And we learn to adapt and make the most of it. So yeah, plans change. Even your estate plan, it will change. To work towards, I guess the third thing is to work towards having a vision and setting goals for the future. Writing down what your values are, what's important to you, and having that guide where you want to work towards, or what you want to work towards on the farm, in the business, the things that you want to achieve, and just being intentful and active in doing those exact things. So yeah, so it's kind of just a bit of a nutshell bit on the succession planning of just, I don't know, kind of lessons learned in life as well, to think about and be mindful about. And I think that, you know, especially when it comes to each generation, you know, we all say that we want to do better or leave the next generation in a better position that we might have been growing up, especially, you know, like our grandparents. And I don't know where it's going in the future.
Decided to come tonight after all.
Well, okay, so you got to start talking to people about that.
And yeah, just everything that you guys are doing, I think, is great, but I'll talk a little bit more about that a little bit later. So I think that's one of the reasons why, and when I think about my grandparents and great grandparents, you know, who homesteaded, who pioneered Western Canada over 100 years ago, and to think about what I'm doing here in the Yukon, it's pretty spectacular. So yeah, the Yukon. Okay, it gets me all super jazzed up. Before I talk more about the Yukon, I'm going to show you a short 3-minute video that I put together of last year's kind of farm season. So you'll see my little daughter Ellie, who would have been just under 1 year old at the time. She now just turned 2. And she's with me every part of the farm, the farm work that you'll see bouncing away in the tractor, in the holder, and a few other tidbits of Yukon fun in there. So enjoy the video.
All right, I'm gonna pull up that second video now. It is super fun, and I apologize for my being a little bit short-breathed in that last video, because I am, let's see, 8.5 months pregnant, and yeah, just making the most of it. Okay, let's see, it's not popping up yet. Let's see here. I'm assuming that first video went good.
Yes, it did.
Hey, perfect. All right, here comes the second one. All right. Well, I hope everyone enjoyed that. Perfect. All right. Well, yeah, like I said, it's a pleasure to be here, and a little bit about my farm background. I thought that it was really neat how one of the farmers in the video, Kim, had said that, you know, when he first learned about ALUS and how it lined up with his values, like, that's great. That's perfect. That's exactly the things that we want to be doing. And for me being up here, it's just, I don't know, kind of experiencing a whole new world and new adventures, new challenges. And I'm like, bring it on, for sure, 100%. In the video, that was a caribou that was swimming across Kuswa Lake when we were boating to one of our camps, and then there was a bison wanting to hang out with the horses out on the grazing lease. And so that yeah, that was pretty entertaining. He was quite clever, actually. He'd try to like chase the horses away from the hay, and then the horses would try to chase him away. And we had the same scenario this year, except with a bear. And the bear was chasing the horses away, and then the horses were like, no, like, you get away from our hay. So the bear went into the bush, and then totally did a circle around the horses. And then all of a sudden it's just the bear in the hay, and the horses are all like in the bush trying to find the bear. So yeah, bears, horses, all sorts of fun wildlife up here. And yeah, let's see. So I bought my first quarter of land back in 2014. And back then, so it was freshly cleared. So I had there's about 15 acres of hay, and then I seeded 30 acres into oats, just for green feed. So for the hunting business, we have about, well, I think we have about 38 horses now that we need to feed, and hauling hay up the highway is pretty expensive. The hay that does come up the highway rather comes from interior BC or northern Alberta for the most part, or the compressed cubes from Olds, which is, yeah, kind of a long ways to get up here, but it's come up in the past, and I'm pretty proud to say that. I think yeah, we're pretty self-sufficient on our horse feed now, which is awesome. So we cleared a bunch of land on our original quarter. So next year I'll be seeding a 70-acre chunk into oats. I think one last year, and then we'll be seeding it down into hay. And then on my new quarter land, which I was successful in my land application, in a plan land application app, which is pretty much writing a business plan, explaining on why you think you're worthy of homesteading land in the Yukon. And so yeah, I was lucky enough to be one of the 3 farmers who are homesteading 160 acres each, all side by side. So my neighbor, you can, yeah, I guess in parts of the clips anyways, you could kind of see that he cleared the whole thing, and then I'm clearing most of it, leaving a buffer in the middle. There again, kind of for horses and just to be protected for our future farmland, and then also leaving a buffer towards the highway side as well. And so, yeah, so we're working on that. So I'll be seeding another 60 acres of green feed next year as well. So I know oat prices and fertilizer prices are going up, and I'm like, yeah, imagine what it costs me to get a few tons up here. But nonetheless, Yeah, overall, here in the Yukon, so there's about 150 farmers. We farm about 8,000 acres. There is, though, in classified agricultural land in the Yukon, there's over 20,000 acres, but only about 8,000 acres is actively being farmed. Because I think over the years, farmers have just had a tough go at, keeping their land into production. Because it would have been land that was cleared, 50 plus years ago. And it would have started back in the gold rush, which is the really neat thing. So back in Dawson City, because of the long daylight, they grew cabbages that were just like massive. Like they grew produce and on the rich river bottom, I guess, deposited, rich nutrient soil deposited from the glacier era and all that backstory is that yeah, like the soil was extremely fertile, still is, but just takes work. And so we farm about 8,000 acres now. That's still growing, and we have multiple programs trying to get this ag land back into production. So we produce about $4 million worth of agricultural production here in the Yukon. Our livestock is increasing. Like it's funny because it's like, oh, the largest livestock producer here has 30 head. It's bigger now, but and it's growing, and we never had much for livestock here because we only just first received our first abattoir 4 years ago now. And Temple Grandin came up and did a presentation, and but this is an abattoir that's off grid. They have their power by generator. And it's surreal, really. Is there plans for another one and to move and to grow? Yes, for sure. But it's jumping through the hoops of, farm safety and public comments and commentary, just all that political stuff, I suppose. So challenging, but definitely doable. There's a large scale, one of my neighbors just down the road here has a laying sort of like, yeah, I guess not a laying facility, but he's got eggs, a big time egg producer. In the Yukon, and being a territory, we are not a part of the quota system. Yeah, we're quite special here in the Yukon, actually, and I can kind of go on. We don't apply to a lot of the rules, but yet our rules are very old and desperately need upgrading. We don't have a wetlands policy yet, but there's one in review. If anybody really wants to help us on that or has a passion for wetlands policy, please get a hold of me. Because yeah, they're open for comments until December 3rd. And a lot of people from town who are driving the policy aren't involved in agriculture. So we're very few folks that are worried that the government's just going to, push this through because it sounds all great, and then really limit the farmer in trying to be progressive in farming up in the north. So that's kind of a bit of a challenge, and then I'll jump right into the challenges. So obviously access to inputs is a challenge. Most of anything that I need has to come from Fort St. John, Dawson Creek, Grand Prairie is kind of our closest. If I'm like getting anything trucked up here is a $2,000 to $3,000 tab. And access to land is like, government still hangs on tight to it, and they're like, oh, but we're destroying wildlife habitat. And I'm like, have you looked around? Like we don't have the problems of wind erosion or soil erosion, even, because it's like 30 acres here and 10 acres here, and they're just all these little parcels that have natural buffers of a forest of acres and acres. So the perspective here can be a little bit narrow, and I guess that's where I've really enjoyed being here and bringing like a strong prairie agricultural background and perspective up here, and be like, no, like there's anything's possible. And even then, like our growing season, it's not, the weather up here is not what you would expect it to be. It's not, we still have, you know, a 90-day growing season, and I compare it, it's very similar to the prairie, to the northern prairie, the Peace Country. So northern Alberta, kind of that northwestern Alberta, northeastern BC area. That's very similar to what it is here. So in the past, Whitehorse has been known to be the driest city in Canada. So because of the Rocky Mountains, it takes a lot of the moisture. So we're left with almost nothing, with the exception of the last couple of years. So you guys had droughts. We were like flooding out here. It's crazy to think. But Mother Nature is going to present us with more extremes, and because of over time, the changes over time, we definitely have melting permafrost underneath our landscape. So, and it'll be different depending on the mountain valley that you're in. So I did a permafrost test out at our land, and 18 feet down, I've got solid chunks of ice, like chunks of ice the size of my thumb, just everywhere in the clay. And so it will make for an undulating, you know, soil topography over time. Will it happen will I see it in my lifetime, in my field? Probably not like that, but there are areas where there's sheets of ice that are slowly melting. And so you will see big time potholes that are just sinking. So it makes it for real fascinating country. You know, can you still work with it within the agricultural realm? You definitely can, because there's room there. Like our natural grasses or our native grasses are pretty strong. Or can be in some areas. So I do manage a couple grazing leases as well. Like this last year, I mean, we've been lucky to have moisture. So we've had lots of grass, which has been awesome. So typically our agricultural farmland, in order for it to be classed as ag land, it has to be a minimum of class 5. Which isn't the greatest, but that's what I have to work with. So my farmland is class 5 soils. Grazing lease is like class 6. My texture is silty clay to clay loam, with a 12, almost 13% organic matter. It's deficient in nitrogen. There's nothing there. So if you do want to grow, over time, I plan to build that, and try to build that as naturally as I can, with different mixtures, like even seeding peas or some kind of cocktail mixtures. I think that would be great to do out there. It's just, kind of trying new things and having that goal, in mind. And for my case though, it is going to, like, my focus is to grow feed for the horses, to be self-sustainable for our feed. So growing an oat green feed is unfortunately my immediate future, but definitely looking to try new things and to collect the data on my frost-free days, on my heat units. Like, I have no idea what our heat units are up here. What are the different cocktail mixtures that I could maybe attempt? So yeah, I'm kind of like with the land that I have at hand, I've got the next couple of years to kind of figure out what I want to try and maybe be a bit of a pioneer of what's going to be the new norm in the Yukon. Wetlands, cover crops, similar to the Peace Country. So that's kind of a little bit of the background of the farming. I guess the farming bit in the Yukon. I sit on multiple boards and definitely am happy to offer my insight. And we're discussing the quota right now, like if we want to be a part of quota on the dairy side and the poultry side, because we've got this great market of Alaska just right across the border, but we can't access that yet. you know, could it be a big opportunity? Definitely. Could we have dairy cows up here? Definitely. We just don't yet. Yeah, I'd like overall everybody, like with the weather and saying that, you know, our winters are so long and so cold. You guys will have a colder winter than we will on average. Like, so it's kind of, yeah, it's kind of funny. It's comparable. I didn't get no shock when I came up here. The days do get shorter and longer, but because of that change, like right in the middle of our solstices, we lose or gain 11 minutes of daylight a day. Like, it's crazy. Like, that's the peak. And then every, you know, other week, like every week you'll notice a change of the daylight. So it's getting dark right now, and we're happy that it's getting dark because there's way too much light in the summer. And then when the summer comes, then we're happy for it to get light again. So yeah, happy about that too. Now, I wanted to, I guess, end my chat bit a little bit about, yeah, I think everything that ALUS is doing is on par. Such a great idea. And great work done by farmers, because I think that, you know, when I think about how mom and dad were and the environment that we grew up in, you know, we were proud to be stewards of the land. We wanted to do the best that we could possibly do for, I mean, not only ourselves and our business, but for our livestock and for our land, because if those two weren't healthy and happy and doing well, then we couldn't, you know, kind of reap what we sow. And so, yeah, being environmental stewards and working on our ecosystems, and giving back to our ecosystem services, and just, you know, being, I guess, advocates of that in order, because then that'll translate into our overall story to the consumer, right? Because at the end of the day, they're the ones that cast their vote with every dollar that they spend, every dollar that we spend. That's what they're supporting. And so, I mean, there's some really neat stuff going on there. And I think that there's, the local food movement and the biggest opportunity for Canadian farmers, I believe, especially after all the international travel that I've done. I've been asked, you know, out of all the countries you've been to, which country are you most proud of, or do you think that are doing like a really great job in agriculture? And so when I think about that, you know, there's other countries that are doing what they have to because of the dense population, like the UK. Like the way that they're managing things, and we only evolve, or we only innovate out of the necessity to need to. So I think that we kind of miss out on that opportunity a little bit, but where my answer is still Canada, and I'm still proud of Canada, because we still do a lot of really great things. I mean, the land that we do get to take care of, that's not all under pavement and cement, is like spectacular. You know, like Canada is such a diverse, productive country that, yeah, it gives us the biggest opportunity to then take care of it, because it'll, you know, give back to us in return. And but the biggest opportunity, I think, for us is to provide local food, like is just to do the processing here. Why do we get to be the commodity producer, ship it overseas for everybody else to make the money on, and then buy it back? So I think that there's definitely we're definitely seeing a change into like small innovation and on-farm food processing. And I mean, the Nuffield Scholars for this current year, so we've awarded 6 scholarships of $15,000, and they then gain access to the world's biggest network in agriculture, of the top 10% of people who are changing the way how we do things. So we've got a girl from Nova Scotia who's going to look into queen bee health. She's like, because most of the bee farmers in Canada, they import their queen bees every year, if not every second year. So what can we do to, to just, I guess, have them live longer and last maybe 3 years. So queen bees, we have a lady, Ingrid Johnson from BC, who's doing direct marketing or shipping their beef, their on-farm grass-fed beef to direct to consumers' doors with dry ice. Like, how cool is that, right? So she's then serving or supplying her immediate community, but her immediate community being she's from a 150-mile house and she's sending a lot of her beef to Vancouver. Like, really cool stuff. Like, that's a Canadian product staying in Canada and not going down to the States and then coming back. And that whole minimizing transportation and direct to consumer stuff is really neat. And but I could go on. But one thing that I did want to bring up and that I think is very relevant to this group. So our last 2 scholars that have just released their report. So Ryan Boyd from Manitoba did a report titled Grazing Ruminants. So a long-term solution to ag profitability, productivity, and climate change. And his is on exactly what Christine was talking about, the adaptive management, AMP. And anyways, so it's pretty much all about high density grazing. It might even be a step further than what Christine presented. So I'd highly recommend going to check out if that's something that interests you and you're a cattle producer. It hits it home. Like it's a home run for cattle producers and managing their rangeland and even working together with neighboring farmers. And so his report can be found on nuffield.ca under reports. And then if you want to catch his presentation, he's actually presenting on Sunday via Nuffield. That'll be available on Zoom and anybody to catch in. So those links will be available tomorrow on the Nuffield website. And then that then leads into his classmate, or one of his classmates, Mark Brock from Ontario, who just released a report on farmer-to-farmer collaborations. So he gives a really neat perspective of how farmers can work together. Anyways, I'll leave it at that. But both of them will be presenting this Sunday, 1 to 3 p.m. Central Time. Yeah, Central Time. And feel free to reach out to me in the meantime if you have any questions about Nuffield or Ryan's report or Mark's report. They're both like really great individuals and have done really great. So in closing, and to offer a few words of encouragement, you guys are killing it. You're making a difference, so keep up the great work. It is unrealistic to expect different results in doing the exact same thing over and over again. I think that collaboration fuels innovation, and innovation creates change, and change, like I said, is constant and is needed for a better future. So there again, thank you for the invite. I really wish it was in person and that I maybe wasn't so pregnant that I could have went down there, but we did our best and we made it work. I welcome any comments, questions, follow up. Thanks for the opportunity. I'll be around.
Thank you so much, Leona. That was awesome. I had so many questions and comments flipping through my head as you were speaking. You've done so many cool things and have so many great insights. There was a question in the chat. What made you go to the Yukon?
Oh yeah, I guess I never explained that bit. Oh, the love of my life. Oh man.
Oh, that'll happen.
Yeah, no, my husband and I moved up here together. So he's a 3rd generation outfitter. And so for outfitting, for those of you who don't know, it's a hunting business. And so we own the rights to 2 concessions here in the Yukon, and we sell hunts, or we give hunts to So mainly sheep, mainly mountain sheep, so Dall sheep, and then we do moose and grizzly bear are kind of the three the three main ones. So with COVID for the last couple of years, we've had a lot of Canadian. We've been really great to really lucky to get a lot of Canadian hunters up here, which is pretty neat because they're like, oh, you know, like the Yukon, for anybody that comes out to the Yukon, it's not what they expect it to be. And the open invitation is there to all of you who want to make a road trip up here. Please reach out, get in contact with me, and I'd be more than happy to help make your Yukon adventure a little bit special.
I know there are some hunters on the event. Yeah, I don't hunt, but I would sure like to see the Yukon.
Yeah, I've got camps you can stay at.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Does anybody else have any questions of Leona while we've got her here?
Very cool. Thanks, Naomi.
You can unmute and ask, or maybe we're just, there's so many cool things. So they're really being cautious, I guess, the government, about how much land they release for agriculture, like that. It's
political. I mean, I don't know. It's kind of a touchy subject because, of course, everybody wants the land that's closest to town and easy access and whatnot. But it's with all the parties at play. So the First Nations in the Yukon are different than the rest of Canada because they are self-governing. So in don't quote me on the year, I guess, but in the 1990s, they signed off on the Lands Act, and all but two bands, I think. And so this made them self-governing. So it makes them a whole level of government in the Yukon. So then we need to consult with them on every bit. So they do have their, there's different classes of First Nation lands here in the Yukon. So then that takes out kind of a big chunk, not a big chunk, but parts of big chunks around the communities where I can't apply because I'm not a band member, so I can't apply for agricultural land in that area. And then you got like reserved area and national parks and territorial parks. And so there's kind of, it's kind of hard to find land is still available, but the government has control of everything. And the kicker is that there's, out of a population of about 40,000 people, we're not that many people here. 40,000 people in which two-thirds, if not 3/4 of the population lives right around Whitehorse. So there's the same thing. We're not very big. Leduc has more people than the Yukon. And we have over 3,000 government employees. So like we get a big federal, like, thanks for your tax dollars, guys. But we get a lot of money that goes to funding. And I don't know, like some of it I think is really great because yes, we're in the north, but there's still so much that I think that we need to be a little bit more self-sustainable or self-sufficient in than relying on government funding and everybody else. So yeah, I mean, it's a challenge, but we're picking away at them for the land bit.
Well, Yukon seems like it has a lot of opportunity for that local food, cut down on the transport that would be very helpful, right?
Yeah. No, 100%. Yeah. Christine asked a question about what was the most daunting task when starting your own homestead? I'd say just trying to figure out what to spend like money. And so I work with FCC. I'm an FCC client. And that dozer that I have is just a little dozer, but it's all I need. So yeah, daunting, I suppose there's a lot of stick picking. That would be the most daunting task.
Not as many rocks, but more sticks.
No rocks, just sticks.
Dan looks like he unmuted. Do you have a question, Dan?
Oh, I just thought it was really interesting, and if we ever get up to the Yukon, we're gonna find your place.
Definitely. Yeah.
And
I'm just outside of Whitehorse. I'm not far.
like I've seen in some of the magazines we've been reading, there are people that grow huge cabbages and
Yeah.
different things. Like it must mean there's enough hours of sunlight to
100%.
do the job.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think that's our advantage is the daylight, right? So we might not have we'll have the same amount of days, but the daylight is virtually so technically it's 22 hours of daylight is our longest day. It doesn't get dark for those 2 hours. It's just behind the mountain. So once my oats gets growing, it'll grow.
Are the mosquitoes bad?
Not any worse than Alberta.
Okay.
Yeah, no, they're not.
We went up to Alaska once and it was really nasty. We got kind of up on the tundra more or less.
Yeah. I think at some places in the mountains, definitely. Yeah.
But no, it's a nice place to go, and we sure like to get there, but it's quite a drive, eh?
Yeah, it's not. So from Edmonton, I want to say it's 25 hours.
Oh.
Not too bad.
Yeah. Probably want to stop somewhere on the way. Yeah.
Yeah, a few times. Yeah.
Especially with a young family.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Well, I sure enjoyed your talk, and thanks again, Leona.
Thanks, Daniel.
Anybody else? We are getting close to the end here. Type it in the chat, or we don't have her for much longer, and then we'll be disappointed. I should have asked that. Well, it's really encouraging to me too, that life growing up on a farm. You can't beat it, and it's really nice to see another young generation getting started. Little baby, and that's something. I remember packing my kids outside, and my mother likes to talk about how she had me in August, so I was in the grain truck when I was just a few weeks old, right? So it's in your blood that way. It's nice.
Oh, there'll be more sticks to pick when they're old enough. We'll find work. Yeah.
Okay, well, with that, I guess thank you very much again, Leona, for your words and your story. And I guess with that, we'll say good night, everybody.
Good night.
All right.
That's
Bye-bye.
perfect. Great job, Kim.
Oh, thank you. You bet. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Leona. That was really interesting.
You're welcome, Christine. Great work.